The news was everywhere. I saw it on the giant screens downtown while I shivered in the cold. Dorian Hale, the richest and most handsome CEO in Riverside, was in a terrible car crash. But that wasn't the biggest shock. Every headline screamed a dirty secret. The accident left him permanently impotent. The famous Hale family line was finished. His mother, Lenora, was on TV looking desperate. She needed a miracle, or her family's legacy would die with Dorian's injuries. The scene shifted from that wealthy world to my own nightmare. I was running. The rain soaked through my thin clothes as I sprinted away from the KTV club. My mother, Morella, had tried to force me to work there to pay off her debts. Behind me I heard the heavy boots of thugs splashing in the puddles. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was a medical student with big dreams, but right then I was just a girl trying to survive. I turned a dark corner and crashed right into a man leaning against a sleek, black car. It was him, Dorian. He looked pale and angry, pushing away his guards. When my hand brushed his arm to steady myself, he didn't flinch or yell. He froze, looking at me with eyes like cold diamonds. For the first time since the accident, he didn't look broken. In that moment, I didn't know that helping the stranger would lead to a secret that would change my life forever. The giant digital billboard over Riverside Square was glowing so bright it made my eyes hurt. Every single screen showed the same thing. A twisted black sports car and a blurry photo of a man in a suit. Dorian Hale, the end of the Hale line? The headlines screamed. The news lady looked like she was about to cry. The doctors say the accident was terrible, she said. The youngest billionaire in the country is alive, but the rumors are true. Dorian Hale is now permanently impotent. The richest man in the city can never have an heir. I pulled my thin hoodie tighter. I didn't have time to worry about a broken billionaire. I had my own problems. There she is. Get her, a man yelled. I bolted. My sneakers splashed into deep, oily puddles. Behind me, 3 thugs from the KTV club were gaining ground. My own mother had tried to sell my time to them to pay off her gambling debts. She didn't care that I had a medical exam tomorrow. She only cared about the money. Please God, let me get away, I whispered, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I turned into a dark alley near the hospital, but it was a dead end. A sleek, black luxury car was parked there, blocking the way. A man was leaning against the door, clutching his side. He looked like he was in pain. Even in the dark, I could see he was wearing a suit that cost more than my entire life. Get lost. He growled at me. His voice sounded like grinding stones. I'm sorry, I cried, looking back. The thugs were at the mouth of the alley. I just need to hide. I didn't wait for him to say yes. I dove toward the space between him and the car. As I moved, my foot slipped on the wet pavement. I reached out to catch myself and grabbed his arm. The man stiffened. I expected him to push me away in disgust. Every story I'd read said Dorian Hale hated being touched, but he didn't move. He stared down at my hand on his sleeve, his eyes wide with shock. You, he breathed. Suddenly, a bright light hit us. The thugs had found me. Hey, girlie, stop bothering the gentleman and come back to the club, the leader laughed, pulling out a pocket knife. I felt the man next to me change. The weakness I saw a second ago vanished. He stood up straight, towering over me. He looked like a king standing in front of a beggar. She's with me, Dorian said. Oh yeah, and who are you? The thug sneered. Dorian stepped into the light. The thugs froze. They recognized the face from the billboards. They recognized the broken man who still had enough power to erase them from the map. Run, Dorian told them. He didn't raise his voice, but the thugs turned and scrambled away like frightened rats. I let go of his arm, my heart still racing. Thank you, sir. I'm Arden. I have to go. I started to walk away, but he grabbed my wrist. His grip was firm but not mean. His skin felt like it was on fire against mine. Wait, he said, his voice lower now. The news says I can't feel anything. They say I'm useless, but when you touched me, I felt it. I looked into his dark eyes and saw something a grade 7 student like me shouldn't have seen. A deep, lonely hunger. I was just a poor girl in a wet hoodie, and he was the most powerful man in the city. But in that rainy alley, we were both just 2 people trying to find something that wasn't broken. I didn't know it then, but that one touch had already planted the seeds of a secret that would shake the entire world. The next night, the rain had stopped, but my life felt more underwater than ever. I was back in our cramped, peeling apartment, staring at my medical textbooks. I tried to focus on the human heart, but all I could see were those dark, hungry eyes from the alleyway. "Arden, get out here!" My mother, Marilla, screamed from the kitchen. I walked out, my stomach twisting. She was wearing her work makeup, bright red lipstick and too much powder. Beside her stood my father, Hollis, who wouldn't even look me in the eye. "You're going back to the KTV club tonight," Marilla said, tossing a sparkly, way too short dress at me. "Thorne Radcliffe is coming in, and he's looking for a fresh face. You're gonna be that face." "Mom, no," I gasped, clutching the sequins like they were burning my skin. "Thorne is a criminal, and I have my anatomy final tomorrow. If I miss it, I lose my scholarship." Marilla stepped close, the smell of cheap cigarettes following her. "Your brother Perrin's school fees are due, and your father's medicine isn't free. You think your little books are more important than this family?" "But I saved a man last night," I started to say, thinking of Dorian. "I don't care if you saved the Pope." She snapped. "Put the dress on, or I'll throw your textbooks in the trash. Now." An hour later, I was standing in the neon-lit hallway of the Royal KTV Club. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a cold hand. I felt exposed and sick. The manager pushed me into a private VIP suite. "Don't be boring, Arden," he warned. "The guest in here is the most important man in the city." I walked in, keeping my head down. The room smelled of expensive cologne and vintage wine. I picked up a bottle of water from the table, my throat feeling like sandpaper from fear. I took a long drink, not noticing that the seal was already broken. Suddenly, the door opened. A man walked in, surrounded by bodyguards. My breath hitched. It wasn't the scary criminal Thorne Radcliffe. It was him. Dorian tonight. He looked different tonight. He wore a dark blue suit and his hair was pushed back. He looked powerful, cold, and untouchable. But as soon as he saw me standing there in that ridiculous dress, his eyes turned into fire. "You?" he whispered. I tried to speak, but a strange wave of heat washed over me. My head started to spin, and the floor felt like it was turning into water. I dropped the water bottle. The room blurred. "Dorian," I choked out, stumbling forward. My mother had done more than just force me to work. She had made sure I wouldn't say no to the guest. The water was drugged. Dorian moved faster than I could blink. He caught me before I hit the floor. His arms felt like solid iron, and for some reason, the heat in my body screamed to be closer to him. "She's burning up," Dorian growled at his assistant Callum. "Who did this to her?" "Sir, the club manager said her family." "Get them out," Dorian interrupted, his voice sounding like a storm. "All of them. Now." He lifted me up into his arms. I reached up, my fingers curling into his expensive shirt. I knew I should be scared, but in the middle of the drug-induced fog, he felt like the only safe place in the world. "Stay with me," I whimpered, burying my face in his neck. Dorian froze. I felt his heart thudding hard against his chest, fast and wild, just like mine. The man the news called broken was holding me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever found. "I've got you, Arden," he whispered into my hair. "And I'm never letting that family touch you again." That was the last thing I heard before the world turned black, and the night truly began. The morning light felt like needles stabbing at my eyelids. I groaned, trying to turn away from the brightness, but my body felt heavy, like it was made of lead. Beneath me, the sheets didn't feel like the scratchy, thin fabric of my apartment. They felt like cool silk. The air didn't smell like my mother's stale cigarettes or the damp mold of the KTV club. It smelled like sandalwood and expensive rain. I forced my eyes open. I wasn't in my room. I was in a bedroom so large it could have fit my entire apartment inside it 3 times. The walls were a soft gray, and a massive chandelier hung from the ceiling like a frozen firework. Then, the memories hit me. The KTV club, the drugged water, the heat, and Dorian. I bolted upright, clutching the silk duvet in my chest. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. "Oh no," I whispered. "What have I done?" "You're finally awake." The voice was deep and smooth. I looked toward the window. Dorian Hale was standing there, silhouetted against the morning sun. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket anymore. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and he looked tired, but his eyes were sharper than ever. "Where am I?" I asked, my voice trembling. Did something happen last night?" Dorian walked toward the bed. Every step he took made the room feel smaller. He sat on the edge of the mattress, and I instinctively pulled back. "You were drugged, Arden," he said, his voice turning cold. "Your own mother sold you to a monster. If I hadn't been in that room, you wouldn't be sitting here right now." I looked down at my hands. I felt a wave of shame so strong I thought I might be sick. My mother had really done it. She had tried to ruin me for a stack of cash. "I have to go," I said, my voice breaking. "I have my final exam. I can't stay here." "I've already sent word to your school," Dorian said calmly. "You were ill. They moved your exam to next week. You aren't going anywhere until I know you're okay." "You can't do that," I cried. "I don't even know you. People say you're dangerous. They say you're broken." Dorian leaned in closer. I could feel the heat radiating off him. "Do I look broken to you, Arden?" I couldn't answer. He looked like the strongest man I had ever seen. "Last night," he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "was the first time in years I felt alive. The doctors told me I was a lost cause. But then you touched me in that alley. And last night, you proved them all wrong." I felt my face turn bright red. I remembered parts of it. The way he held me, the way his touch calmed the fire in my blood. I pushed the covers aside and stood up, shaky on my feet. I found my clothes from the night before, the sequin dress, folded neatly on a chair. Beside them was a new set of clothes. A soft cashmere sweater and simple jeans. "Change," Dorian commanded. "Then we're going to the hospital." "I'm a medical student. I don't need a doctor to tell me I'm fine," I argued, though my head was still spinning. "We aren't going for a checkup," he said, his expression unreadable. "We're going for a test." The Hale private hospital was like a five-star hotel. There were no white tiled floors or the smell of bleach. It was all marble and quiet music. Dorian's assistant, Callum, walked beside us, keeping people away. I was led into a private room where a woman in a lab coat was waiting. She looked at me with a mix of curiosity and respect. "Miss Blythe, I'm Dr. Pryor," she said. "Mr. Hale has requested a full blood panel and an ultrasound." "An ultrasound?" I laughed nervously. "Why?" "It's only been 2 months since—" Wait. My heart stopped. 2 months. 2 months ago was the night of the car crash. The night I saved the stranger in the alley. The night we were both drugged by the thugs and ended up in that warehouse before the police arrived. Dorian stood by the door, his arms crossed. He didn't say a word. I lay down on the table, the cold gel feeling like ice on my stomach. I looked at the ceiling trying to breathe. I was a medical student. I knew how this worked. But my brain was frozen. Dr. Pryor moved the wand across my belly. The screen was fuzzy at first, just gray and black shapes. Then, she stopped. She clicked a few buttons, and a rhythmic sound filled the room. Thump, 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 thump. "There's the heartbeat," Dr. Pryor said, smiling. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "1?" I whispered. "Actually," the doctor said, moving the wand slightly. "Wait a moment. Look here, Mr. Hale." Dorian moved to the side of the bed. He stared at the screen like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "There are 2 gestational sacs," Dr. Pryor announced. "Miss Blythe, you aren't just pregnant, you're having twins." The world tilted. Twins? I was 20 years old. I was poor. My family hated me. I was supposed to be studying for exams, not picking out baby names. I looked at Dorian, expecting him to be angry. I expected him to tell me it wasn't his or to tell me to leave. Instead, Dorian did something I didn't expect. He reached out and took my hand. His palm was huge and warm. "Twins," he repeated. His voice wasn't cold anymore. It sounded thick with emotion. He looked at the screen, and for a split second, the scary billionaire disappeared. He just looked like a man seeing a miracle. But then, the door burst open. I knew it. A woman with perfectly coiffed hair and a suit that cost more than a car marched in. It was Lenora Hale, Dorian's mother. Behind her, my mother, Morella, was scurrying like a mouse, looking both terrified and greedy. "Morella told me my son was seen taking her daughter to a hotel," Lenora said, her eyes flashing. She looked at the monitor, then at me. "Is it true? Is there an heir?" "2," Dorian said, his voice turning back into steel. He let go of my hand and stood up, shielding me from his mother. Morella pushed past Lenora, her eyes landing on me. "Arden, you little brat, you were hiding this? Do you know how much a Hale baby is worth? I told you that KTV job would pay off." "Mom, stop it," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "This isn't about money." "Everything is about money," Morella shouted. She turned to Lenora. My daughter is carrying your grandsons. I want $5 million right now, or I'm taking her home and we're going to a clinic to fix this problem. I gasped, pulling the hospital gown tight. You wouldn't. Try me, Morella hissed. You're my daughter. I own you until you're married. Dorian stepped forward. The air in the room seemed to turn to ice. He looked at Morella like she was a bug he wanted to crush. You don't own her, Dorian said, and you will never touch her again. Yet she's my blood, Morella screamed. I can do what I want. Callum, Dorian said, not taking his eyes off my mother. Write a check for $100,000. Morella's eyes lit up. Only $100,000? For twins? That's for the medicine you bought for your husband, Dorian said. The rest, you get nothing. Because if you ever come near Arden again, I won't use my checkbook. I'll use my lawyers to put you in a cage for drugging a student. Morella paled. She looked at Lenora for help, but Lenora was too busy staring at the ultrasound screen. Get out, Dorian commanded. My mother grumbled, snatching the check Callum held out and stomped out of the room. I felt a tiny bit of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a new fear. I looked at Lenora Hale. She didn't look like a woman who was easy to please. Lenora turned to me. She didn't smile. She looked me up and down like I was a piece of fabric she was checking for holes. She's a peasant, Dorian, Lenora said. A medical student from a family of thieves. We can't have her in the Hale family. She's carrying my children, Mother, Dorian said. She stays with me. Then she stays in the guest house, Lenora snapped, and we tell the press she's a surrogate. I won't have the Hale name dragged through the mud by a girl who worked at a KTV. I didn't work there, I shouted, finally finding my voice. I was forced. I'm a student. I want to be a doctor. Lenora ignored me. Dorian, remember the plan. You need an heir to keep the board members happy. Once the babies are born, we will pay her off and find you a proper wife, someone like Vesper Lockwood. The name hit me like a physical blow. Vesper. My roommate. The girl who spent every day telling me how low class I was. Dorian looked at me. I searched his face for a sign that he agreed with his mother. But his face was a mask. Arden is coming home with me, was all he said. As they led me out of the hospital, I felt like a bird being moved from one cage to another. The cage was made of gold and silk, but it was still a cage. I touched my stomach, where 2 tiny lives were just beginning. I was betrayed by my family and homeless in my own heart. I had helped a stranger, and his billionaire secret had changed my world. But as I looked at the dark windows of Dorian's limousine, I realized the battle had only just begun. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for theirs. The gates of the Hale estate didn't just open. They hissed, like a giant snake parting its teeth to swallow me whole. As the limousine crawled up the winding driveway, I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. The house, if you could even call it that, was a mountain of white marble and glass, sitting on top of a hill that overlooked all of Riverside. It looked beautiful, but to me, it felt like a fortress meant to keep the world out and me in. You'll stay in the East Wing, Dorian said, breaking the heavy silence. He hadn't looked at me since we left the hospital. He was back to tapping away at his tablet, his face as hard as a statue. It's quiet there. The doctors say stress is bad for the babies. I have my own apartment, Dorian, I said, my voice small. And I have school. I can't just move into a museum. Dorian finally looked up. His eyes caught mine, and for a second I saw a flash of that same intensity from the night before. Your apartment is a death trap, Arden. Your mother has the keys. Do you think she won't sell your location to the highest bidder the second she runs out of that $100,000? Here, there are guards. Here, you are safe. I hated that he was right. My mother would probably sell my shoes while I was still wearing them, if it meant she could hit the jackpot at the casino. The car stopped, and a line of servants in perfect uniforms bowed as the door opened. I felt ridiculous stepping out in my oversized sweater and sneakers. I felt like a smudge of dirt on a polished floor. Welcome home, Master Dorian, a head butler said. He glanced at me, his eyes flickering with judgment before he looked away. We entered the foyer, and the sheer wealth of the place made me dizzy. The floors were polished gold-veined marble, and the air smelled like expensive lilies. But the peace didn't last long. From the top of the grand staircase, a sharp, familiar voice echoed down. "So the rumors are true. You really brought the charity case home, Dorian." I looked up, and my heart sank. Standing at the top of the stairs, wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my medical tuition, was Vesper Lockwood. She was my roommate at the university, and she was the last person I wanted to see. She had spent the last 2 years making my life a living hell, calling me the scholarship beggar and trash girl. "Vesper," Dorian said, his voice flat. "What are you doing here?" "Your mother invited me," Vesper said, gliding down the stairs like a swan. She didn't even look at Dorian. She kept her eyes locked on me, her lips curled in a nasty smirk. "She told me you were having a little technical issue with the family line and needed a temporary vessel." I didn't realize it was my very own roommate. "Tell me, Arden, did you plan this? Was the KTV job just a way to trap a billionaire?" "I didn't trap anyone, Vesper," I snapped, my face heating up. "And I didn't choose to be here." "Oh, please," Vesper laughed, reaching the bottom step. She leaned in close to my ear so only I could hear. "You're just a womb with a scholarship, Arden. Don't get comfortable. Once those brats are out, you'll be back in the gutter where you belong." "That's enough," Dorian growled. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stepped between us, his massive frame towering over Vesper. "Arden is a guest in this house. You will treat her with respect, or you will leave." Vesper's fake smile faltered for a second, but she didn't back down. She placed a hand on Dorian's arm, the same arm I had grabbed in the alleyway. "Dorian, darling, don't be like that. Your mother and I were just talking about the Hale Group's charity gala next week. You need a partner who knows how to hold a champagne glass, not someone who thinks a 5-course meal is a burger and fries." Dorian pulled his arm away. "I'll choose my own partner, Vesper. Callum, show Miss Lockwood out. She has a busy schedule of being spoiled and useless to get back to." Vesper turned red, her eyes darting to me with pure hatred. "This isn't over, Arden," she hissed before spinning on her heels and marching out the front door. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "She hates me," I whispered. "She hates anyone she can't buy," Dorian said, turning to me. He looked at me for a long time, his gaze softening just a tiny bit. "Are you hungry?" "I'm tired," I said truthfully. "I just want to sleep." Dorian nodded and signaled to a maid. "Take her to the East Wing. Make sure she has everything she needs. If she asks for anything, anything at all, you get it for her." The maid led me through endless hallways, until we reached a suite that was bigger than my entire childhood home. There was a canopy bed, a walk-in closet filled with brand new clothes in my size, and a bathroom with a tub that looked like a small swimming pool. I sat on the edge of the bed, the silence of the mansion feeling heavy. I was safe from my mother, and I was safe from the thugs. But as I looked at the gold-framed mirror on the wall, I didn't recognize the girl staring back. I was Arden Blythe, the girl who wanted to save lives. Now I was a secret hidden in a golden cage, carrying the airs of a man who was a stranger to me. I touched my stomach. "It's just us," I whispered. Suddenly there was a soft knock on the door. It wasn't the maid. I opened it to find Dorian's assistant, Callum, holding a small box. "Mr. Hale wanted you to have this," Callum said, handing it to me. "He noticed your phone was broken during the incident at the club." I opened the box. It was the newest smartphone, already set up. But when I turned it on, there was a message waiting on the screen. It wasn't from Dorian. It was an anonymous text. It was a photo of me and Dorian at the hospital, with a caption that made my blood run cold. "A fake pregnancy won't save a beggar. Enjoy your stay while it lasts, because I'm going to make sure the world knows you're a fraud. Vesper." I looked out the window at the dark riverside skyline. I thought I had escaped the storm, but the clouds were just gathering. I wasn't just a medical student anymore, and I wasn't just a guest. I was a target. And in this house of billionaires and secrets, I had to learn how to fight back before I lost everything. I picked up my textbook from the bedside table. If I was going to be a prisoner in this golden cage, I was going to be the smartest prisoner they'd ever seen. I opened the first page and started to read. The sounds of the mansion's security guards patrolling outside, the only reminder that my old life was truly gone. I woke up at 5 in the morning, my brain already reciting the cranial nerves. Even in a room that felt like a palace, The old habits of a poor student didn't die. I had to get to the university. Dorian had handled the sickness excuse for my exams, but I couldn't hide in the East Wing forever. If I missed my clinical rounds, no amount of billionaire protection could save my medical career. I dressed in the simple jeans and soft sweater Dorian's staff had provided. They were expensive, but they didn't scream "Billionaire's secret." As I crept down the grand staircase, trying to avoid the judgmental eyes of the portraits on the walls, I saw Dorian sitting in the dining room. He was drinking black coffee and reading a financial report. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked without looking up. "To school," I said, gripping the strap of my backpack. "I have a life, Dorian. I have to graduate." Dorian stood up, his massive frame blocking the light. "Vesper Lockwood is at that school. My mother's influence is at that school. It isn't safe for you there." "I spent my whole life being unsafe," I countered, looking him right in the eye. "If I let fear stop me now, then my mother wins. Vesper wins. I'm going." A flicker of something, maybe respect, passed through his dark eyes. He sighed and set his coffee down. "Callum will drive you, and he will stay on campus. Do not argue with me on this, Arden." The university felt different today. As I walked through the stone arches of the medical wing, I noticed people whispering. They weren't just the usual whispers about my thrift store shoes. These were sharper. "That's her," a girl from my microbiology class hissed, pointing at me. "I heard she got caught at a KTV club and is trying to blackmail some rich guy." My stomach did a slow flip. Vesper had been busy. I tried to ignore them and headed for the lab, but when I reached the door it was blocked. Miss Corinne Whitlow, the school counselor known for being a cold-hearted stickler for rules, stood there with her arms crossed. Beside her, looking like a mournful angel, was Vesper. "Arden Blythe," Miss Whitlow said, her voice like a paper cut. "A word in my office. Now." Vesper gave me a tiny, victorious wave as I was led away. Inside the office the air was stifling. "Arden," Miss Whitlow began, tossing a stack of photos onto the desk. "These were sent to the board this morning. They show you entering a KTV club in questionable attire, and several reports state you have been seen entering the Hale estate." "I was forced to go to that club by my mother," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "And as for the Hales, that's a private matter." "It becomes the school's matter when your private life brings scandal to our institution," Miss Whitlow snapped. "Vesper Lockwood has kindly informed us that you are attempting to use a pregnancy, which we suspect is fake, to extort money from the Hale Group. We have a reputation to uphold. We are considering your immediate expulsion." "Expulsion?" I gasped. "I'm the top of my class. You can't expel me based on gossip." "It isn't gossip when there's proof of moral misconduct," a new voice boomed. I turned to see Helene Lockwood, Vesper's mother, walking in. She looked just like Vesper, but older and meaner. "The Lockwood family provides a massive portion of this school's funding. We don't want our daughters sharing a classroom with girls of your profession." I felt like I was being buried alive. Everything I had worked for, every late night, every skipped meal was being snatched away because of a lie. Is that so? The door to the office didn't just open, it was shoved aside. Dorian Hale walked in, followed by Callum and a team of men in dark suits. The tiny office suddenly felt like it was under a vacuum. Miss Whitlow turned pale. "Mr. Hale, we didn't expect you." Dorian didn't look at her. He walked straight to me and put a hand on my shoulder. His touch felt like an electric shield. "I heard there was a conversation about moral misconduct. I'd like to hear more about that." Helene Lockwood straightened her pearls. "Dorian, dear, this girl is a fraud. She's dragging your name through the mud. We were just helping the school clean up the mess." Dorian looked at the photos on the desk. He picked one up and tore it in half. "My fiancée was at that club because she was kidnapped by criminals I am currently prosecuting. As for her scandalous presence at my estate, she lives there because she is the future mother of the Hale heirs." The room went silent. I looked up at him, my heart stopping. "Fiancé? Now," Dorian said, turning his cold gaze on Miss Whitlow. "I've noticed the medical wing needs a new research center. I was prepared to donate $10 million today, but I find myself wondering if I should invest in a school that expels its best student based on the jealous lies of a roommate." Miss Whitlow's jaw practically hit the floor. 10 million? Dorian, you can't be serious. Helene cried. She's a nobody. She is the woman I've chosen, Dorian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. And if I hear one more word about expulsion, I won't just pull my funding. I'll buy this land and turn this office into a parking lot. Do I make myself clear? Miss Whitlow nodded so fast her glasses nearly fell off. Perfectly clear, Mr. Hale. Arden, dear, there must have been a terrible misunderstanding. Please, go back to your labs. Your scholarship it's actually been upgraded to a full fellowship. Vesper, who had been listening at the door, turned white and ran off. Dorian led me out of the office. Once we were in the quiet hallway, I pulled away. Fiancé? You told them we're engaged? It was the only way to silence them, Dorian said, looking down at me. The world doesn't respect a guest, Arden. They respect power. If you're my fiancé, you're untouchable. But it's a lie, I whispered. Dorian stepped closer, pinning me against the wall with his shadow. Then we make it look like the truth. Because Vesper and her mother aren't going to stop. This was just the first round. I looked at him, realizing that my life had truly split in two. In one world, I was a student trying to learn how to heal hearts. In this new world, I was a pawn in a game of kings, and the only person protecting me was the man who had just bought my future with a checkbook. Thank you, I said softly. Don't thank me yet, Dorian said, his eyes darkening. Your mother is waiting at the front gates. She heard about the fiancé news on the radio. Round 2 is about to start. I looked toward the windows. My mother, Morella, was outside, screaming at the security guards and holding a sign that said, Dorian Hale stole my daughter. The golden cage was getting smaller, and the world outside was getting louder. I took a deep breath, touched the tiny bump on my stomach, and walked out to face the woman who had sold me. I thought the gates of the university would keep the chaos out, but my mother was like a weed. No matter how much concrete you poured over her, she always found a crack to crawl through. By the time Dorian and I reached the main entrance, a crowd of students had gathered, holding up their phones to record the scene. Give me back my daughter, Morella wailed, her voice hitting a high, screeching note that made my teeth ache. She was sitting on the ground, her hair messy on purpose, clutching a cardboard sign. The billionaire stole my girl. He's keeping her prisoner. Help a poor mother. The students were whispering, their eyes darting between my mother's ragged appearance and Dorian's expensive suit. In their eyes, she was the victim and we were the villains. I'll handle this, Dorian muttered, his grip on my hand tightening. No, I said, stepping forward. She's my mother. If I don't face her, she'll never stop. I walked toward her, the cameras following my every move. Mom, get up. You're making a scene. Morella looked up, and for a split second, I saw the calculation in her eyes. There were no tears, just greed. Arden, look at you, wearing gold and silk while your poor father is at home dying. You forgot about us the second you climbed into a rich man's bed. Dad isn't dying, Mom, I said, my voice steady even though I was shaking inside. And you know exactly why I'm with Dorian. You were the one who sold me. Lies, she shrieked for the cameras. I'm a loving mother. Mr. Hale, if you want my daughter, you have to pay the proper bride price. $2 million, not a penny less, or I'm calling the police for kidnapping. The crowd gasped. $2 million. It was a disgusting amount of money to ask for your own child. Dorian stepped up beside me, his presence like a cold shadow. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked straight at Morella. You want $2 million? That's right, Morella said, standing up and dusting off her skirt. She thought she had won. Cash, today. Callum, Dorian said, his voice calm and deadly. Callum stepped forward holding a tablet. Sir? Call the Riverside police. Tell them I have a recorded confession of Morella Blythe attempting to extort $2 million in a public place. Also, send over the footage from the KTV club showing her accepting money to drug her daughter. Morella's face turned a sickly shade of gray. You can't do that. I have rights. You had rights until you treated your daughter like a product, Dorian said. He turned to the crowd, his voice booming so everyone could hear. This woman did not come here for her daughter. She came here for a check. If any of you want to post these videos, make sure you include the part where she asked for $2 million to walk away. The students started muttering, but this time, the tone was different. They weren't looking at Morella with pity anymore. They were looking at her with disgust. Arden, you'll regret this. Morella hissed, leaning in close as the security guard started to move her away. You think that billionaire loves you? He only wants what's in your belly. Once those babies are out, you're nothing. You'll come crawling back to me, and the price will be even higher. I watched them drag her away, her screams fading into the distance. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. Even though she was gone, her words stuck to me like mud. He only wants what's in your belly. That afternoon, Dorian insisted I come to the Hale Group headquarters. He said it was safer than the school or the estate for the time being. The building was a giant needle of glass and steel that pierced the clouds. As I walked through the lobby, I felt the eyes of every employee on me. The news of the fiancé had spread like wildfire. I was led to the top floor, where the offices were quiet and smelled of leather and success. Wait here, Dorian said, gesturing to a plush sofa in his office. I have a board meeting. It won't take long. I sat down, feeling out of place. To pass the time, I pulled out my medical journals, but I was interrupted by a woman entering the room. She was wearing a tight pencil skirt and had a sharp, pointed nose. Can I help you? I asked. I'm Brianni Cade, Mr. Hale's head secretary, she said, looking at me with a sneer. She set a tray of tea down on the table, but she did it so roughly that some of the hot liquid splashed onto my hand. Ow! I pulled back, my skin turning red. Oh, I'm so sorry, Brianni said, though she didn't sound sorry at all. I guess I'm just not used to serving special guests. We've had a lot of girls like you show up claiming to be pregnant. Usually they're just looking for a handout. You're just the latest one. I'm not looking for a handout, I said, my voice rising. Sure you aren't, Brianni laughed. But let's be real. Look at you. You're a charity case. Dorian is a man who deals with billions. You're a distraction, a mistake. If I were you, I'd take whatever money he gives you and run before the accident happens. What accident? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. The world is a dangerous place for girls who don't belong, she whispered. Just then, the door swung open. Dorian walked in, his brow furrowed from the meeting. He stopped when he saw me clutching my burned hand and Brianni standing over me. What happened? Dorian asked, his voice low and dangerous. She spilled the tea, Mr. Hale, Brianni said quickly, her voice turning sweet. She's so clumsy. I was just trying to help her. I looked at Brianni, then at Dorian. I was tired of being the victim. I was tired of people thinking I was weak. She splashed it on me on purpose, I said firmly, and she told me I was just a mistake that needed to be cleaned up. Dorian's eyes turned into chips of ice. He walked over to Brianni, his presence filling the entire room. Is that what you said to my fiancée? Sir, she's lying. Why would you believe a girl like her over me? I've worked for you for 5 years. Brianni stammered. You worked for me for 5 years, Dorian corrected. But you just insulted the mother of my children, Callum. Callum appeared in the doorway instantly. Yes, sir? Clear out Brianni's desk. She's fired. And make sure every agency in Riverside knows why. She is never to work in this city again. Brianni gasped, her face turning white. You can't do this, over a girl like her? Get out, Dorian growled. As Brianni was ushered out in tears, Dorian turned to me. He took my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle as he looked at the red mark on my skin. He led me to his desk, pulled out a first aid kit, and began to treat the burn himself. You didn't have to fire her, I whispered. Yes, I did, he said, not looking up. No one disrespects you, Arden. Not my mother, not Vesper, and certainly not my staff. For a moment, as he carefully wrapped my hand in a bandage, I felt a strange warmth that had nothing to do with the tea. He was protecting me. But as I looked at him, I saw the stress in the lines of his face. Dorian? I asked. Why are you doing all this? Is it really just for the babies? He stopped, he looked at me, and for the first time, the mask of the billionaire CEO cracked. There was something deep and painful in his eyes, something that reminded me of the man in the alley. In this world, everyone wants something from me, he said softly. My mother wants an heir, my board wants profits, Vesper wants a trophy. But that night in the alley, you just wanted to help a stranger. You're the only real thing in my life, Arden. My heart did a strange flutter. But before I could respond, the office phone buzzed. Sir? Callum's voice came through the speaker. We have a problem. Vesper Lockwood is downstairs. She claims she has medical proof that Arden's pregnancy is a lie, and she's brought the press with her. Dorian's hand tightened on mine. The peace was over. The greed of my mother was gone, but the jealousy of the Lockwoods was just beginning to roar. Dorian's office felt like a glass cage. Outside the window, I could see news vans pulling up like hungry sharks. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. Vesper was downstairs, and she was coming for me. "Dorian, what if she has something?" I whispered, looking at the bandage on my hand. "What if she found out about the night in the alley?" Dorian didn't look worried. He looked like a hunter waiting for his prey. "Let her come. Lies always fall apart when they hit the light." The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. Vesper walked in, but she wasn't alone. She was followed by a group of reporters and a man in a white lab coat. She looked like she had just won the lottery. In her hand, she clutched a small velvet box and a folder. "Dorian, darling," Vesper said, her voice dripping with fake pity. "I'm so sorry I have to be the one to do this, but as your friend, and as the daughter of a family that actually cares about the Hales, I couldn't let you be tricked by this." "Thief." She pointed a long, manicured finger at me. "Get to the point, Vesper," Dorian said, his voice cold enough to freeze the air. Vesper tossed the folder onto his desk. "This is a medical report from the university clinic. It shows that Arden Blythe visited the campus doctor 3 months ago, seeking a fix for a late period. She wasn't pregnant then, and she isn't pregnant now. She's using a fake bump and a stolen ultrasound to trap you." The reporters started snapping photos. I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's not true. I never went to the clinic for that." "Oh, really?" Vesper smirked. She turned to the man in the lab coat. "Dr. Fisk?" "Tell them." The doctor cleared his throat. "I am Dr. Rowan Fisk. I treated Miss Blythe. She told me she wanted to find a way to fake a pregnancy to get money from a wealthy student. I couldn't live with the guilt of keeping her secret." I felt sick. My mother must have paid him, or Vesper had. I looked at Dorian, expecting him to be angry at me, but he was looking at the velvet box in Vesper's other hand. "What's in the box, Vesper?" Dorian asked quietly. Vesper's eyes lit up. This was her big moment. She opened the box to reveal a heavy gold ring with a dragon carved into it. It was beautiful, ancient, and very familiar. "I found this in my jewelry box," Vesper said, her voice turning soft and romantic for the cameras. I realized I had forgotten something very important because of the shock. "Dorian, it wasn't Arden who saved you in the rain the night of the crash. It was me. I found you by the car. I gave you my ring to hold so you wouldn't pass out. I'm the girl from the alley. I'm the one you've been looking for." The room went silent. The dragon ring was a legend in Riverside. It was the mark of the person who had saved the CEO. I looked at the ring. My breath hitched. I remembered that night. I remembered the man in the car, the blood, and the way I had reached into my pocket and given him my grandfather's old ring to squeeze while I called for help. But the ring in Vesper's box was shiny and new. My grandfather's ring was scratched and worn. Dorian walked over to Vesper. He picked up the ring and held it to the light. "You saved me?" "Yes, Dorian," Vesper breathed, stepping into his space. "I was too modest to say anything, but when I saw you being tricked by this beggar, I knew I had to speak up. I'm your savior, not her." Dorian turned to me. His face was a mask of shadows. "Arden, do you have a ring like this?" I looked at my empty hands. My mother had taken my grandfather's ring weeks ago to pawn it. I had nothing. "No," I whispered, "I don't." Vesper laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "See? She's a fraud, she's not the savior, and she's not pregnant. Guards, kick her out." The reporters started shouting questions. "Miss Blythe, how does it feel to be exposed?" "Mr. Hale, will you be suing for fraud?" I felt like the floor was opening up to swallow me. I looked at Dorian, but he was staring at the dragon ring with a strange smile. "This is a very nice ring, Vesper," Dorian said. "Only the best for you, Dorian," she purred. "There's just one problem," Dorian said, his voice suddenly turning into a roar. He threw the ring onto the floor. It hit the marble and shattered into 3 pieces. Everyone gasped. Vesper froze. "The real dragon ring isn't gold," Dorian said, stepping toward her. "It's made of heavy iron. It was a gift from my grandfather to the person who saved his life 50 years ago. I gave it back to the girl in the alley that night because she dropped it while saving me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, dark ring. My grandfather's ring. I've had the real one the whole time, Dorian said. I was waiting to see who would try to steal the credit. And as for the medical report... Dorian snapped his fingers. Callum stepped forward with a laptop. We just finished the background check on Dr. Fisk. He was fired from 3 hospitals for taking bribes, and we have a recording of Vesper Lockwood's mother transferring $50,000 to his bank account this morning. Vesper's face turned from white to a sickly green. Dorian, I can't explain. I thought it was me. I was confused. Get out, Dorian said. It wasn't a shout. It was a death sentence. And take your fake doctor with you. Callum, release the real ultrasound video to the press. The one from the Hale Hospital. Let the world see my twins. The reporters turned their cameras on Vesper, who was trying to hide her face as she scrambled toward the elevator. The savior was now the laughingstock of the city. When the room finally cleared, I slumped onto the sofa. My head was spinning. You had my ring the whole time? Dorian sat down next to me. He held out the iron ring. I found it in the grass after you ran away that night. I knew it was yours because it smelled like the herbs you use in the lab. He took my hand and slipped the ring back onto my finger. It was cold, but it felt like home. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, he said softly. I had to let them show their true colors. They'll never stop, will they? I asked, looking at the ring. No, Dorian said, his eyes hardening. They're desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. We have to be careful, Arden, especially now. I touched my stomach. Vesper was gone for now, but I knew my mother and the Lockwoods wouldn't give up. They were like wounded animals. Just then, my new phone buzzed. It was a text from my father, Hollis. Arden, please. Your mom is gone. I'm at the Riverside Clinic. The doctors say I won't make it through the night. I just want to see you one last time to say I'm sorry. Please don't tell the Hales. Just come. My heart twisted. I knew it could be a trap. But what if it wasn't? What if my father was really dying? Arden? Dorian asked, noticing my expression. It's nothing, I said, hiding the phone. Just a school notification. I looked at the iron ring on my finger. I wanted to believe I was safe. But as I looked at the message from my father, I knew the biggest betrayal was still to come. I stared at the text from my father until the letters blurred into shaky lines. I won't make it through the night. My heart felt like it was being pulled in 2 directions. One side of me, the medical student side, knew that Hollis Blythe had been a heavy smoker and drinker for years. It was possible his heart was finally giving out. But the other side, the girl who had been sold for a check, reminded me that my family's words were usually poison. Arden, you're pale, Dorian said, reaching out to touch my shoulder. I'm just tired, I lied, quickly deleting the message. I think I'll head back to the East Wing and study. The scandal at school took a lot out of me. Dorian studied my face for a long moment. I felt like he could see right through my skin, into the messy thoughts I was trying to hide. Stay in the estate tonight. Callum is doubling the guard, the Lockwoods are cornered, and that makes them dangerous. I know, I said, leaning up to kiss his cheek, a small, quick thank you that left my lips tingling. I'll see you in the morning. But I didn't go to sleep. As soon as I heard Dorian's study door close, I changed into my darkest clothes. I felt like a traitor. Dorian was doing everything to keep me safe, but if my father was really dying and I didn't go, I would never forgive myself. That was my flaw. I still wanted to believe there was a piece of a real family left for me. I crept out through the servants' entrance and called a taxi from a block away. Riverside Clinic, I told the driver. And please hurry. The Riverside Clinic was a small, run-down building on the edge of the city. It was the kind of place where people went when they didn't have insurance and didn't want the police asking questions. The neon sign over the door was flickering, buzzing like a dying insect. I pushed through the glass doors. The lobby was empty and smelled of bleach and old grease. I'm looking for Hollis Blythe, I told the nurse at the desk. She didn't even look up from her phone. She just pointed toward a hallway labeled Ward B. I walked down the dim corridor, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. Every shadow looked like a person waiting to grab me. I reached room 204 and pushed it open. Dad? I whispered. The room was dark, a single monitor was beeping slowly. I saw a figure in the bed, hooked up to an IV. It was my father. He looked smaller than I remembered, his face thin and gray against the white pillow. "Arden," he wheezed, his hand shaking as he reached for me. "You came?" I rushed to his side, my medical training taking over. I grabbed his wrist to check his pulse. It was thready and weak. "Dad, what happened? Why didn't Mom call the Hale group?" "Your mother, she's gone, Arden," he coughed. "She took the money and left. She didn't care about me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything we did to you." Tears pricked my eyes. This was all I had ever wanted, to hear him say he was sorry, to feel like I wasn't just a product to them. "It's okay, Dad. I'm here now. I'll get you moved to the Hale Hospital. They have better equipment." "No," he said, his grip on my hand suddenly tightening. It wasn't a weak grip, it was like a vice. "It's too late for that." Suddenly the beeping of the monitor changed. It wasn't a heartbeat anymore. It was a recorded loop. I looked at the IV bag. It wasn't medicine. It was just colored water. I tried to pull my hand away, but my father sat up in bed, a cold, sharp smile spreading across his face. He wasn't dying. He wasn't even sick. "Gotcha," he whispered. The closet door behind me slammed open. I spun around, but a heavy hand clamped over my mouth before I could scream. It was Marlowe Trent, a man with a scarred face and cold, dead eyes. He was the kind of man my mother usually hired to collect her debts. "Don't make a sound, Princess," Marlowe growled in my ear. Vesper Lockwood stepped out from behind him, holding a syringe. She wasn't wearing her silk dresses or pearls anymore. She was wearing a dark hoodie, and her eyes looked wild, like she had completely lost her mind. "You really are a fool, Arden," Vesper laughed, her voice shaking. "Did you think a man like Hollis Blythe could ever love you more than a stack of hundreds? He didn't even need 100,000 this time. He did it for 10. I looked at my father. He was standing up now, detaching the fake wires from his chest. He wouldn't look at me. He just reached out his hand toward Vesper. "The money," my father said, his voice flat. Vesper tossed a thick envelope at him. "Take it and get out of here. If I see you again, I'll kill you myself." My father grabbed the money and walked out of the room without a single backward glance. He didn't care that he was leaving his pregnant daughter in the hands of a murderer. My heart broke in a way that felt permanent. The last bit of the old Arden died right there in that hospital room. "Now," Vesper said, stepping toward me with the needle. "Dorian thinks you're his savior. He thinks those babies are his future. But what happens when the savior disappears? What happens when the fraud finally runs away because she couldn't handle the pressure?" "Dorian will find you," I choked out through Marlowe's fingers. "He knows what you are." "Dorian is halfway to the airport," Vesper sneered. "My mother made sure there was a crisis at the London office. By the time he realizes you're gone, we'll be at the old warehouse by the docks. And you'll be a tragic headline." She plunged the needle into my arm. I felt a cold sting, and then a heavy, dark wave began to pull me under. I fought it, thinking of the twins, thinking of the iron ring on my finger, but my muscles turned to jelly. "Sweet dreams, roommate," Vesper whispered. The last thing I felt was being lifted by Marlowe and dumped into a laundry bin. As the lid closed, I saw the iron ring on my finger catch a sliver of the hallway light. I prayed that Dorian would see the message I had managed to send right before I walked into the room. A single GPS pin I had dropped to Callum. The world went black, and I was falling into the deepest cage of all. I woke up to the sound of crashing waves and the smell of rusted metal. My head felt like it was filled with sharp glass, and my wrists were raw from the thick ropes tying me to a wooden chair. I wasn't in the clinic anymore. I was in an old, abandoned warehouse by the docks. The moonlight peeked through the holes in the roof, hitting the dusty floor. "She's awake," a voice hissed. I blinked, trying to see through the darkness. Vesper was sitting on a crate in front of me, playing with a flick knife. Marlowe Trent stood behind her, his arms crossed. "You should have stayed in the gutter, Arden," Vesper said, her eyes wide and bloodshot. "But you just had to take everything. The school, the fame, and Dorian. My mother lost her position on the board because of you. My father is being investigated. You ruined us." "You ruined yourselves," I croaked, my throat feeling like it was full of sand. "You lied. You cheated. I just wanted to be a doctor." "A doctor?" Vesper laughed, stepping closer. She pointed the knife at my stomach. You won't even be a mother by the time I'm done. I'm going to take you out to sea, and when Dorian finds your little GPS pin, he'll only find an empty chair. I looked down at my hand. The iron ring was gone. Marlowe must have taken it while I was out. I felt a surge of panic. Without that ring, without Dorian, I was just a girl in a chair. But then, I remembered my medical training. I remembered the human body. I knew where the pressure points were. Vesper, look at me, I said, my voice getting stronger. You're shaking. You're having a breakdown. If you do this, there's no coming back. My father already betrayed me for $10,000. Is your life worth $10,000? Shut up, she screamed, lunging at me. Crash! The giant metal doors of the warehouse didn't just open, they flew off their hinges. A fleet of black SUVs roared into the building, their high beams blinding us. Drop the knife, a voice boomed over a megaphone. It was Callum. And behind him, stepping out of the lead car with a look of pure murder on his face, was Dorian. He didn't wait for the guards. He ran toward us, his coat flying behind him like a cape. Stay back, Marlowe yelled, grabbing me by the hair and holding a gun to my head. One more step and she's dead. Dorian stopped 10 feet away. He was breathing hard, his knuckles white. Marlowe, look at the snipers on the roof. You have 10 red dots on your chest. If you pull that trigger, you won't live long enough to hear the bang. Marlowe looked up and I saw the sweat bead on his forehead. He knew he was outmatched. Dorian, Vesper shrieked, waving her knife. She's a lie. She's a nobody. I'm the one you should love. You're a monster, Vesper, Dorian said, his voice quiet and deadly. And you're not a Lockwood. Vesper froze. What? A third car pulled up. A man stepped out, Cedric Lockwood, Vesper's father. He looked older, sadder, and he was holding a stack of papers. I did the test, Vesper, Cedric said, his voice breaking. When the rumors started about Arden's family, I got suspicious about your mother's secrets. You aren't my daughter. My wife lied to me 20 years ago. She swapped our real baby for you because she wanted a perfect child from a healthy line. Vesper dropped the knife. It clattered on the floor. No, that's a lie. I'm a Lockwood. The real Lockwood daughter had a rare blood type, Cedric continued, walking toward me. His eyes were filled with tears as he looked at my face. And a birthmark, in the shape of a star on her shoulder. My wife told me the baby died. But she didn't die. She was given to a poor family named the Blythes in exchange for a gambling debt. I gasped. I felt the world shift. I reached up and pulled my collar down, revealing the small, star-shaped mark on my shoulder I had always hated. Cedric fell to his knees. Arden, my daughter. I've been looking for you for 20 years. Marlowe saw his chance to escape and dropped his gun, running for the back exit, but Callum tackled him before he could take 5 steps. Dorian didn't care about the criminals. He ran to me, slicing my ropes with a pocket knife and pulling me into his arms. I've got you, he whispered, shaking. I've got you. I'm never letting go again. 6 months later. The sun was setting over Riverside, turning the river into a ribbon of gold. I stood on the balcony of the Hale mansion, wearing a white silk gown. My stomach was round and heavy, and I could feel the twins kicking inside me, strong and healthy. Beside me stood Dorian, his hand resting over mine. On my finger, the iron ring sat next to a massive diamond engagement ring. The hospital is finished, Dorian said, kissing the top of my head. The Blythe Lockwood Medical Center. You'll be the youngest director in history once you finish your residency. I smiled. My mother Morella was in prison for kidnapping and fraud. My father Hollis had disappeared with his $10,000, and I never wanted to see him again. Vesper and Helene were gone, stripped of their names and their wealth. I wasn't the homeless girl in the rain anymore. I wasn't the impotent CEO's secret. Are you happy, Arden? Dorian asked. I looked at the city below, then at the man who had saved me, just as much as I had saved him. I felt the life moving inside me, and the love of a father who was finally proud of me. I'm not just happy, Dorian, I said, leaning into him. I'm home. As the stars began to twinkle over the city, I realized that some things have to be broken before they can be fixed. We were both broken once, but together, we were a masterpiece.